Alright, so I have created few examples and this is the folder. So this whole folder you can download from our website kodegod.com, and these are the all folders, or these are the all samples that we are going to cover in this tutorial. So starting with the first sample, we have this sample related to borders and background. So we are going to have one dedicated CSS file and HTML file at the same level, and the other content that we are going to require will also be in the same folder. In ideal development scenarios, it is not advisable to keep your folder structures or files organized in this way, but this is just to avoid scenarios wherein you might miss references to a certain file or something like that. So we are going to cover one separate tutorial on basics of web technologies. In that, I'm going to explain how typically the file structure should be when you develop your web development pages. So here we have a CSS file and then a HTML file, and these are four images that we will require. One is background image, then another image that will be used for the background, and then we have one more image. You may not be able to see this image, but it is kodegod logo in white color, and then we have this particular image that is a logo. So in the code files, if we notice, this is the HTML file and this is our CSS file. So in the HTML file, I have referred the file over here using link tag, and then we have code related to the HTML. So we just have a couple of h4 and div tags over here. Okay. So with the help of this div tag, I am trying to set backgrounds and border colors to the web page or the elements. So using this, we are just trying to set backgrounds and borders to the HTML elements. So this is just basic code. We have just specified classes to all these divs wherever it is required. And in the CSS files, we have written definition of all these CSS classes. So if we view the page, so this is something that the way the web page is going to look like. So starting with the very first one, where we have border image, wherein image is used as the border. Okay. So if you notice here, we just have this h4 code which has rendered this part, and then we have this div to which I have specified class as border image. And if you go to the CSS code, at the top you'll find the CSS related to it. So here I specified height and width as 100 pixel, and I have specified border style as solid, border width is equal to 15, and then I have specified the border image where the URL is given along with these other parameters that we have seen in the slides. So margin technically is not required over here, so we can definitely skip this part. So if I just refresh, so there's no significant difference. Only thing is that the image has got shifted towards right. Okay, so for now I'm just going to keep it as it's. Similarly, we have this radius class where I have specified border radius as 20 pixels and it has got rendered over here. So if you want, I can change this value like this and hit refresh. So we can notice that there is a difference between the border edges. So the rounding has got reduced. So if you want to increase it something like this, okay, the corners are becoming more rounded. Okay. So if I just restore it to 20 pixels, you can notice that still there's a difference. And then we have background clip where I have just specified the background color and then I have specified the border. This is very simple. So we just have a dashed border and the color of the border is #333 and the width is 6 pixel. So again, I will just quickly change few things. Let's say maybe 20 pixels, and instead of dashed I'm going to write, let's say, dotted. Okay, and then color I'm going to change to, let's say, 999. Okay, so when I hit refresh, so you can notice that instead of dash, the dots are being displayed now. Also the width of the border has got increased. Then moving on, we have bg clip, this as a new class. This is almost a similar example, but if you notice that the background clip property that we have applied is specified as padding box. So if you notice here, the border is going outside of the box. Okay. And in the earlier example, we had the background clip specified as a border box. That is why the border was coming on to the box. Okay. So if I just undo these changes, okay, and refresh, so you will notice the difference over here. Here the border was on the box, and here in the padding box it is coming outside of the box. Similarly, we have a content box wherein it is coming completely out of the border area in the box area. So the border is basically coming for the content itself. It's basically coming to the HTML element. So it is considering the padding also inside it. So if I, let's say, increase the padding as 100 pixel, okay, so you can notice that the border is considering this padding as well. So these are very, I would say, rare cases wherein these properties will be used, but it's still good that we have understanding of this. Then we will talk about background origin as border box. So because we have specified this property over here, so you can notice the background origin is border box. So background basically starts from the border of the box. So if you notice, the image is starting from this point, and when you have background origin as padding box, okay, so in that case background will start from the padding box itself. So let me just try to change the padding box here, 100 pixel. Okay, when I hit refresh, so you can notice that it is starting from this particular location, and whereas in this case when I increase the padding 100, so these are identical now, but you can notice that the image is getting started to render from the border in this case, and here in this case it is starting from the padding. Okay. Similarly, we have the content box wherein the background will start where your content area is. So this is the content area. This white space is your padding. So if I just increase it by, let's say, 100 pixel, so you'll notice that the image is starting from here. In other cases, it has started either from this point or completely from the extreme point, that is the border of the whole element. Then finally, we are going to talk about how we can apply multiple backgrounds. So the final example, we have specified height, width and margin to the div element. And if you check the background property, we have one URL where I have specified logo white and it's no repeat and center. So that is why this image that we have seen, which was in white color, that is the kodegod logo, which is coming in the center. And there is one more background, that is bg.png. It is again no repeat and center, and that is also falling wonderfully well, centrally aligned. And this is how two multiple backgrounds are being displayed over here. So again, we have seen the no repeat. So if you want, you can write a repeat y over here, something like this. Okay, and it will repeat itself over y-axis. Okay, you can also write just repeat. Okay, and it will repeat itself horizontally and vertically like it. But because we wanted to display it only one time, so we have written no repeat, so it will just display for the one time. Okay, so like this. So I think what you can do is you can download these files from our website and play around with this CSS. So fastest way to play around with this is using the inspect. Okay, so you can open the inspect like this, and you can change the properties from here. Maybe you can change the color from here, something like this, and then you can play around with different values. Okay, so you can just write few words and change the possible values and see how it is going to look. Okay, but as I have said previously, these are all the temporary changes, and in order to work it permanently, you need to change in the file itself. Okay, so let us continue with the other CSS properties. So you can also see that to understand this concept related to border padding and from where exactly your image is starting. So you can see the computed box over here. Okay, so this is your actual content, this is the padding box, okay, and this is the border, okay, and in case you have any margin, so that is also displayed over here. Okay, so if we select this particular object, okay, so this is the actual content, this is the padding area, and this is the border area. So here what we have used is background origin as a border box, so that is why it has started from the border area like this. Okay, and in the next example we had the background origin as padding box. So if you notice, when I select the padding box, the image has started rendering from the padding box. And finally, in the content box, if I select this object, we have set the background origin as content box. So if you notice, this is our content box, the box in the middle, and the background image is set to the content box only. So this is one easy way to understand this concept. So as I said, you can play around these examples, try changing this property in case you want to enable a property. In case you want to disable a property, you can just uncheck it, okay, and it will be reflected immediately. So if I just, let's say, uncheck the border over here, so it is gone. If I have to enable it, I can just click back and it will be enabled. If I want to add additional property, I can press a tab and start writing new properties over here. Okay, so something like this. So you can select certain value, let's say padding bottom I have selected, and I am writing 100 pixel as the value. So you can see the changes are reflected at the real time, but again these are temporary changes. You need to write these changes into your file, and only then those will become permanent. So let us continue with the other CSS properties. Alright, so now we will continue with fonts. So font is a very deep subject actually. We need to be sure of what type of fonts that we use, what style it is going to possess. So these kind of things are actually technically part of big subject. In terms of fonts, we need to ensure that what family we are going to select, or wherein each font is going to have. So fonts usually have a deep impact on your web pages. So choosing a right font itself is a big choice. But anyways, we are going to restrict our study related to fonts in terms of how we can set different properties related to fonts. So we're just going to quickly check what are the properties related to fonts. The first and most important is the font family, wherein you can set the which font family you're going to choose. Then you have font style, variant, weight, and size. So all these we are going to check one by one. So starting with the font family, we can specify multiple font families. So we have this default font families, which are basically derived or defined font families, like Times New Roman or Helvetica. These are defined families, and you can write multiple font names or font families. So usually precedence will be like this. So if this font is not there, then this will be applied to your rendering page, and even if this is not there, the system font is not there, then this default type space, which is computer generated, will be applied. So it's always good to have these kind of grouping of your font families, but it's not compulsory. You can write single font name like this as well. Then next we have is the font style. So font style is the property, and its values can be normal, italic, and oblique. So in terms of font styles, there's a slight difference between these three. So when we say normal, so default font with its normal mode will be displayed something like this. And in case font definition has specific typefaces defined for the italic mode, in that case, those typefaces will be selected, or those particular font types will be selected. So this is a Droid font, and this is how the normal Droid font will look. And if you notice the difference between this M, okay, so you can see the characters are more cursive in italic mode. So when you specify CSS font style as italic, then the fonts will be displayed like this. Again, to reiterate this point, this will be only happen if the font has specific typesets for the italic. And in case your font does not have the italic typefaces, so what you can do is you can use oblique as the value, and in that case what happens is your normal font will be tilted by 9 to 12%, okay, and it will give an impression like the italic mode. Certain designers basically use strict typefaces and they are quite choosy about the look or the design that font is going to give to the web page. So they might be very selective in terms of font selection or the font style. Talking about fonts is a very deep subject, but we are just going to restrict our focus on CSS at the moment. So maybe in some another video we'll talk about typefaces. But for now, these are three important font styles that you can use in CSS with the font property font style. Then the next is font sizes. So you can set property values in prefixed keywords like this, or you can specify it in pixels or EMs or in percentage. There is one more type that is REM. So I'm going to explain all this, what all these values is going to have impact on your screen. So these are predefined keywords in the CSS, and you can specify as font size colon XX small or X small. So this is basically in comparison with the default mode or the parent mode. So whatever you define, so slightly that version of smaller or larger font will be displayed. Usually default size of font on rendering browser is 16 pixels. Okay, on some versions it's 10 pixels also, and you can explicitly reset this value by writing something like this. Let's say star font size colon, let's say 20 pixel. Okay, so with this you are setting the default size. It will be applied to the root element as well. So when we specify font size in pixels, something like this, so this is exactly the size that will be applied to the element. Okay, so this somehow restricts ourselves to fixed sizes. So if you're going to create a page which will be displayed on laptop or desktop, plus if you want the same page to be displayed on mobile, that is, we're talking about the responsive design. In that case, you will have different font size here and maybe different font size here. So in that case, when you specify a fixed size to one element in pixels, so either it could be displayed very small or a very big over here. Okay, so in that case what we require is the relative font sizes. So that can be achieved either using EM or REM. So what EM or REM is doing, assume we have one parent element, okay, to which I have set size in, let's say, 20 pixels, okay, and then you have a child element, okay, and to this child element when I specify one EM, so one EM is basically relative to the size of your parent, okay. So if this is 20 pixel, so one EM is equal to 20 pixel only. When I say 0.5 EM, so that is equal to 10 pixels. Okay, so this is nothing but the font size of the child element will be dependent on the parent element. So in case of REM, instead of parent, it is relative to the root element of the document. Okay, so if your root element font size is, let's say, 30 pixel, so one REM is equal to 30 pixels. Okay, so when I say 0.5 REM, so that is nothing but 15 pixels in this case. Okay, when I say 2 REM, so that is nothing but 60 pixels. Okay, I believe I have explained this in detail. So this is really important when you're working on responsive or adaptive designs. Otherwise, you can straight away use standard pixels in px or even in percentage. So which will just you are just clearly specifying what size you want to display. Then we have font weight. So using this, you can make your text normal, bolder, or lighter. So these are 3 or 4 keywords that are there, And plus you can explicitly write the font weight value in terms of numbers like 100, 200 up to 900. So here, when I say inherit, so inherit is basically whatever the weight is specified in the parent. Okay, let's say you have a div and to it you have specified value as font weight colon, let's say 600 pixels. Okay, so in this case you have a child element, and in case you want the same size to be adapted by your child, just same as the parent, in that case you can just specify font weight colon inherit, so this same value will be applied to your child element as well. Or alternatively you can specify these keywords or these values. So this is how you can write your code. So font weight colon bold, or you can write, let's say, 100 and so on. Then we have font variant, wherein you can have a small variation wherein text can be displayed in small caps variation. So this is something that we'll check on the live example, so you will understand this better. There are a few more values related to fonts on it. This really depends on your selected fonts. So in simple terms, if you have text like this, let's say A, B, C, then it will be displayed something like this, A, B, C. But I think you'll better understand this with the live example. So let me just cover this point in the live example. Then we'll discuss about the text, another important aspect of your web page. So using this text properties, you can control characters, spacing between those characters, spacing between words, paragraphs, etc. So properties include text color, align, decoration, transform, indent, spacing, line height, and letter spacing. So let us check these one by one. So text color is nothing but setting the text color property. So you can use your RGB values or hex values for defining the text color. Then we have text align property, wherein it sets horizontal alignment of the text. And possible values are left, right, center, justify, and inherit. We know that what inherit is. So it is just going to inherit properties from the parent. So justify is nothing but, let's say you have this particular text, and the left alignment is your text will be aligned to the left like this. Right is basically your text will be aligned to the right hand side like this. Center, we know that when you write center, the text will be something like this. Okay, and when you talk about justify, so what justify does is creates some space between characters, so text width tries to matches end to end. Okay, so you must have seen in newspapers, let's say you have this as the text. Okay, something like this. So if there is some extra space over here, the browser will try to increase spacing between these characters, so that the text or the line is extended to the end of your HTML element. Okay, if you're not understood, we'll obviously going to cover this one in detail in the live example. Let us continue for now. Okay, then next we have is the text decoration, wherein there are fixed values like underline, overline, line through, blink, and inherit. So let us see this one by one. So you can write it like this: text decoration underline. So when you say underline, an underline will be applied just below your text. Overline, basically a line above your text will be displayed. Line through is basically something like this. So if this is your text, line will be displayed like this. Okay, just above your text. Blink is basically used when you want this text to be blink, something that you can use to attract users' attention to a certain text. So none is basically in case there is some property being set from the CSS and you want to overwrite that particular value, then you can explicitly write text decoration none. Then we have text transform. So it sets cases for the text, and the values are capitalized, uppercase, lowercase. So whatever the text that you have, let's say you have this as the text and you set capitalized, then all characters will be displayed in the capital. If you set lowercase, all characters will be displayed in the lowercase. So this is when you have uppercase, this is what we have in the lowercase, and the capitalized is the first letter will be displayed in the capital form. Okay, so here in this case it was already in capitalized form. Let us assume this was the case, then the first letter will be displayed in capital. So this is how you set this particular CSS property. Then we have text indentation. You can use text indent property and you can set the values in percentage or in pixels. So what it does is, let's say you have certain text, so it will set indent for the first line like this. Okay, second line will be continued like this. In case you want all lines to be indented, then you can obviously use padding here. Okay, a small hack that we should know. Then we have word spacing, so it creates space between words. Okay, again you can use pixel format here, so word spacing, then pixels over here. Similar to word spacing, we have letter spacing. So all characters of the words will have some spacing if you're going to specify this particular property. So if this is your text and let's say you add 5 pixel to it, then it will be displayed something like this. Okay, then we have line height. It is again one important property, rarely used, but it is really important. So if you notice here in between line, there is some space. Okay, so basically what it does is it sets height for your line or your text. Okay, so by default, let's say your character height is something like this. Okay, something like this. Okay, and you can increase it, so your line height will become like this now. Okay, and in case you plan to reduce it, there could be a problem wherein the font size is higher than your line height. It can have different behavior, but anyway, that is something that can be rarely used. So you can specify line height like this. So this is basically 100% and you're asking it to increase by 40%. Okay, so if line is like this, okay, then you're increasing it to something like this. Okay, so line height is basically something not displayed. You're just specifying what height you want to apply to each line of the text. And then we have one more property, that is text overflow. So this is basically is required when you want to hide the overflowing text. Okay, so let us take this example. So I have one p tag where I have set the width as 50%. Okay, and I'm saying overflow isn't hidden. So this is really required here because you have text which is going to overflow. So if you have larger text and you have specified width and height like this, so by default it will show a scroll bar. So if you don't want to show the scroll bar, you can write overflow equal to hidden. You can add this one when you don't want your text to be wrapped on the next line. Okay, so that is where this property is used. And then I am writing two classes to explain the effect of text overflow property. So when I apply text overflow clip, okay, and in case I have class clipped applied to this p tag, then the text overflowing out of this p tag will be cut like this. Okay, so it won't be displayed, it won't go on the next line. Okay, and when you have set properties as ellipsis, then it will display these dotted lines. Okay, all right, the next that we're going to check is how we can break the overflowing text. So for that we need to check the property word wrap. So what happens is, by default, let's say you have a div, okay, and you have set one text to it with very long text. So by default the browser behavior is that it will wrap all the text on the next line automatically. But in case you want everything to be displayed in the one single straight line like this, okay, then you can set this property that you can word wrap equal to either break word, or in the previous example that we have seen was the no wrap. Okay, so when you have default behavior, that is a normal behavior, the text will be wrapped like this. Okay, But when you specify values as break all or keep all, so in case of break all, what is going to happen is, you can notice that the words are broken into multiple lines. So this keyword logic is broken into two words technically. It is going on the next line automatically. And when you say keep all, so words are retained as it is in its full forms. So that was all for the text formatting. We will quickly check about links. So links has basically four different states. The one is the default state of the link, then the visited form, then the active, as in when you have clicked on the link, okay, just that particular instance, and then hover, as in when you are going to hover your mouse on the link itself. So you can set these properties using pairs of selector and state. So you can write your hyperlink like this, a colon link, or you can specify the selector as class name, and then specify the state like this link. Then we have these four states. So for each states, I'm specifying one different color and text decoration. We can add multiple properties here as well. So to all these different states, I have set different colors. Okay. So by default, link states have different colors. Let's say by default, the link is displayed in blue color, but in case you want it to be displayed in black color, and let's say visited link to be displayed in, let's say, I don't know, red color or purple color, or let's say pink color. In that case, we can explicitly overwrite those browser behaviors in terms of links by using these CSS property rules. So here we have created one link which is technically displayed in red color instead of default link color that is usually blue. Alright, so we will check few examples on fonts, text and links properties. So in the example set, you can find this folder font-text-links. Inside that there are these two files. So one is the HTML file and the other one is the CSS file, which we will be using inside of this particular file. So you can download these programs on our website. So this is the HTML file. I will be explaining the code written over here, and then we will see how exactly this is reflecting on the browser. So here we have the link tag, and it is basically pointing to the CSS file that I just mentioned. I have kept that file open over here, and then inside of body tags we have one h2 tag and then couple of p tags. We have specified class names as p1, p2 till p5. Then we have another h2 tag and then some code written inside of p tag where a normal text is there, and a span which has a class called as CLR read. So let us see what class code I have written. So inside of this p1 to p5 tags, I have specified font style as normal, then oblique italic, and then inside of p4 I have written font style as oblique, but I have specified additional properties over here. So these are font size and font weight. So font size is large and font weight is bold. And then in the final class we have style set as oblique, font size as large, then font weight as bold, and I have added font variant as small cap. So respective to this code, you can see the changes in the browser. So I have kept this HTML file open over here, and you can notice the italics and oblique style applied to the font. There is small change related to this large size. Though we have specified the large size, you can notice that the font itself is not technically larger than the default font. Now why is that? It is because to the star selector, that is something that will be applicable to all the HTML tags, I have set the font size as 40 pixels. Okay, so this is basically changing browser's default font size from 16 pixel to 40 pixel. So if I remove this line, okay, and refresh the page, so you can notice that the default text is now much smaller, and then this becomes larger than the default text. So in that way, keywords can be sometimes misleading. Though the keyword says large, but it's not technically large. So it is just larger than the default browser's text size. And then for this particular selection, you can notice that font variant I have set as small caps. So though the basic HTML or the default HTML is in this particular font, it has capitalized the all letters, but it is showing the capital letters in cap, okay, and other small letters, that is ODE and OD, still in small size but in capital letters. Okay, so this is nothing but small caps, and we'll continue. So as I discussed, so CLR red is one class that I've added, and it is just font size large, and I've set the color as a red color. So because the span tag is the inline element, okay, so that is why it is just coming inline to your text. Okay, so it is not going on the next line, but instead if you had a div tag over here, so it would have went on to the next line, because div is the element of block type. So to inline element, you can have, these tags like span, and that can comply very well with the other elements or the other text of parent element. Then we will check few other code. So this is one div tag, and inside this div we have a class center. Then there is another div where we have class as left, another div where the class is specified as right, then justify, then indent. We have two more. One is letter space, clip, and ellipses. So the inline code for all these p tags are almost the same. Okay, there are two more. One is the word wrap and word break. So let us see what we have in the class code, and we'll also see what effects it will have in the browser window. So we'll start with the center one. So what I have written is just the text align center and text decoration underline. So what it is doing is all the text, it is getting centrally aligned, and underline is there. So this is your h2 tag, and this is your normal text which was inside the div tag. So we can see over here. So this is the div class center. Then similarly we have left and right. So what we have done is just change the text align property to left and right, and we have added few more text decorations. So to the left we have added text decoration as line through, and to the right class we have added text decoration as overline. So for line through, you can notice that this line is coming, so which is sort of displaying that we are cancelling this text or this information that we have cancelled. Okay, so this is something can be useful in blocks. And then for the right class we have added text decoration as overline. So you can notice that because of the text align right, the text has got right aligned, and because of the text decoration overline, a overhead line is displayed across the text inside this div. Then we have justify as the text element. So what justify does is it tries to accommodate all the maximum screen width available to the your HTML element. So it will try to cover maximum space. So you may have noticed this particular thing in the news articles where they use text align as justify. We have also added a text transformation as capitalized. So what it is going to do is, first letter of all the words, it is going to turn into a capital letter. So if you notice the HTML for this particular tag, we have written everything in the small cases apart from the first letter, which is in capital. But in the output, you can see that all the first letter of each word are getting converted into capital letter. Then we have this indent element or the indent class, and inside it we have one h2 element, and inside of p tag we have another lorem ipsum. But there with this intent, what we are doing is we have specified text align as left, which is usually the default one, and the text indent we have specified as 100 pixels. So what is going to happen is that you can notice that this particular text is getting indented by 100 pixel, and it will happen only with the first line. Similarly on the second line, okay, that was inside your p tag, so there also you can notice the indentation that has happened. We have also specified word spacing as 20 pixel. So you can notice that there's a significant space between these two words, and this will be across all the other words too. So you can notice this space is there. We have also added letter spacing to the class letter space, so that is 5 pixels. So 5 pixel will be added between each letter of the word or whole sentence. You can also notice that we have added line height over here, that is 1.8. So there's a significance height that is being added to the HTML element. So this is 1.8. And if you notice here, so by default it is much lesser than 1.8. Then we will see these examples wherein we used the wrapping of the text and overflow as a property. So in the clipped class, what I have done is I have specified width as 200 pixels, okay, to this particular HTML element, and then I have specified padding as 10 pixels. So you can notice the padding over here across the whole box. And then we have also specified overflow hidden, so that is why the scroll bar will not be displayed. Then we also have white space as no wrap and text overflow equal to clip. So if you notice over here in this particular section, okay, so though the HTML was having a lot of text inside it, so this is the text that was there, but it has got trimmed out, or it is automatically cut because of this property. Because we have written text overflow colon clipped, so that is why what is happening is that it is getting cut. But instead, if you write text overflow as ellipses, so it will add these 3 dots. Okay, so this is required when you have, let's say, a limited area where you are not sure that the text will be a bigger text than the available area size. In that case, you can definitely make use of this particular tag. One small hack is that in case you still want to display this text, so you can add attribute title over here. Okay, so instead of this title, let's say I still again add lorem ipsum text. Okay, let me just copy here because maybe I'm writing inside the attribute, it's not coming. Alright, so I have added this part of the attribute. When I hit refresh, so though this title is not displayed, so it will be displayed in the title part like this. Okay, so this can be used in case of ellipses as well. Okay, now let us continue with this particular class, that is the word wrap. So here what we are doing is I have set the background as red. I have added the padding and width to this element. So we are talking about this particular element over here. The text color I have specified as F1, F1, F1. It's almost a white color. And I have specified word wrap as the break word. So what it is going to do is, in case this next word it is not fitting in the previous line, it will come on the next line and it will be displayed completely as is. However, in case of word break, we just need to specify break all. So what it is going to do is it is going to break the words. Okay, so if you notice this first word, it has come on the next line, but in the case of break all as a value to word break property, it is breaking itself. So C is displayed over here and remaining characters of the same word are coming on the next line. This was for the break word and break all. Finally, we'll quickly check about these small pseudo classes. So to the hyperlink, I can specify colon and I have added link over here, then visited, over and active. So these are actually different state of a hyperlink. So depending on the state, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of that link. So by default, I've added color as red and I've set the text decoration as none. And in the visited, I have specified color a little different. And then for hover, I have specified a different color with text decoration as underline. So when I hover on that link, it will display a underline. Okay, then there is an active mode where I specified color as 111. So this default mode is the link color, okay, wherein a red color is displayed. So when I hover mouse over this particular link, this is mouse over state. And when I'm just going to press my mouse button, okay, so this is the active state. So for now I'm not clicking on this one, so I've released the button. So again it has turned to its original state. Now when I click on this link, okay, you can notice change in these multiple colors. Okay, now because we are not navigating to any page, okay, I'm just going to hit refresh on this page. Okay, because this technically for the browser has not understood that I have clicked on that particular link, so it is not going to change color to this particular one. Okay, but in general when you click on those link, okay, so browser keeps track of those links and it automatically renders that the link was visited earlier, and it will display that link into the visited color instead of the default color that was red. So now we will continue with lists. And lists are basically set of similar items that we usually display with the help of ul, ol and li tags. So in CSS, mainly there are two properties which can be used to display those markers into certain types. So those markers can be displayed like this. So you can specify the square, circle, Roman numbers or Latin numbers, etc. To set the style for the list items, what you can do is you can use property list style type, and then you can specify square, circle, and so on. So these symbols will be applicable to the unordered list or the UL tags, and upper Roman and Latin letters can be applied to the OL tag, that is the ordered lists. And then for the list, there is one more property, that is the list style position. So it holds two values, one is inside and other one is outside. So what it does is basically when you create a list, so it will have a box attached to it. Okay, so if this is the content for your list, okay, similarly here it would be something like this. Okay, so we basically tell the rendering engine that the bullets will be either inside or outside of the box. Okay, so this is the case wherein these are outside, and this is the case wherein these are inside. So it changes only the indentation, you can say, for the list, or in other words you can say that these bullets can be displayed inside or outside of the list item box. Okay, so these are all the list items, and those will be inside of a display box. Okay, and these bullets will be inside or outside of the box. Of course this box will not be displayed on the screen, I'm just writing here for the representation purpose. You can also specify list style image. So in case you don't want the standard bullets, so you can create one image and you can specify URL to that image to property name list style image, and then you can display your custom image as the bullet point like this. Then we will talk about how tabular formats can be managed using CSS. So most common is the border that we have already seen. To most of the HTML elements you can specify border, so in a way that can display it as a table. Okay, now we know that this border property can be applied to any element, so here we are just referring it to table, because when a table is rendered by default it won't have any border, but using CSS you can specify border to your table elements. Alternate way is to make use of border attribute inside of table element, but that is something that border will be displayed in the default format of the rendering engine. But if you want to have explicit control over this, you can make use of border property and specify values to it. So here is one example. To this table we have specified 1 pixel solid border with the red color, and this is how the output is going to be. Reason here is that we have specified to all three tags, table, th and td. So in this example, this outermost border is drawn because of the table HTML tag, and all these border for these inner boxes are drawn because of the TD and TH tag. So TH are basically the first row over here. Then we can also write one more property, that is border collapse. So in case you don't want any spacing in between the border tables, in that case you can definitely write the border collapse, and this is how it will display then. There's no space between THTD and the table. Of course, we can also make use of padding property, okay, using which you can add certain padding between the TH and TD content and its borders like this. So if this is your TD, so we have created this padding between the content and walls of your TD element. Then to the table itself, we can specify layout. So different browsers basically have different behavior for this. Certain browsers may display tables consuming the complete width of the web page or the container, and on some other browsers it may just take the required space. It depends on the content. So if you have a table where the width is, let's say, 200 pixels, and when you specify a table layout as fixed, in that case, it will try to create fixed width for all the columns as equal as possible. And in case you have not set this as fixed, and in case you have set it as auto, in that case maybe this table would have displayed like this. Maybe some additional space would have given to the column in the middle, because there was the text content was higher here. Okay, so there could be some instances where you might require to have fixed width assigned to the table elements. There could be some scenarios wherein you could be having empty cells in the HTML table. So you can explicitly set that rule whether you want to display those empty cells or not. To do that, what you can do is you can specify empty cells property as hide. So in case your HTML elements has one cell or TD as the empty, which doesn't have any HTML inside it, or it doesn't have any content inside it, in those cases those particular TD or those cells will be hidden. Those won't be displayed to the users. Possible properties for empty cells are show, hide, and inherit. Next, we will talk about the outlines. So we will talk about outline style property. Using this property, you can set one styled outline to your HTML element, and possible values are almost similar to the border property. So none, hidden, dash, dotted. So these are all the possible values which you have seen already in the case of borders. So it's almost similar to it. So here is one example. This is how you can specify values to the outline style property, and this is how it will render. So it's almost similar to the border property. There is one additional advantage of using the outline properties is that you can specify outline width, and the width can be specified in pixel, em, pt, and so on. And you can also have these additional keywords wherein you can specify medium, thick, thin, inherit, and so on. Only thing is that these values cannot be in percentage or in negative. So this is how you can write it like this. You can specify outline style dotted and outline width thick. So this is how the output would be. You can also specify the color using outline color property, and again you can specify hexadecimal values or using RGB values and so on. So this is how the output will be. Finally, we can have a shorthand property method. You can just simply use outline as the property name and specify width or the style of this outline and then the color. So this is one shorthand method. Instead of writing 3 different property rules, you can write it in single line using outline property. So this is the output for this particular CSS rule. Then we will talk about the cursors. So cursors are nothing but the pointers, the screen pointers or the mouse pointers that we use. So currently on the screen you can see a pencil. So this is a cursor. So this cursor property is basically used to define cursor types that you want to be displayed on for certain HTML elements. By default, the cursor type is arrow, but when you select on a text field, then it will change to this text mode. And when you have a link, then it will be changed the pointer wherein a hand will be shown. So these are other types. One is the context menu, then copy cursor, and so on. These are pretty useful when especially you're going to work on some applications wherein you could be dragging and dropping HTML elements. So in that case, you can think of changing cursors, and also in case of you have some custom clickable event, okay, and you want to indicate user that this particular area is clickable. In that case, you can set cursor as pointer to that particular element. Okay. Also, there could be cases wherein you have provision to zoom in or zoom out of a certain HTML element. Maybe in case of images, wherein those could be zoomed out to display information in detail. In that case, you can use those cursors. So let us see how we can do that. We just need to make use of cursor property, and you can specify the cursor type. You can also have customized cursor. Again, what we need to do is we need to just specify the URL and the image. However, standard format for cursor is CUR, that is the extension for cursors, and you can also specify it like this. Okay. Similar to font family, you can have multiple cursors like this. So the precedence will be for the first value that is given. In case it is not there, rendering engine will pick up the second, and even if that is not available, the third, or the default behavior that usually the rendering engine is going to have, that will be used. So this one is your user defined cursor, and then generic cursor will be followed in this direction. Then we will talk about the overflow properties. There could be a few cases wherein you have certain limitation for your HTML element. Maybe it's a div and it has a certain content which might get overflow from this particular div. In that case, you can have a scroll bar attached to that particular element like this. Okay, now this overflow can be either vertical like this, or it can be horizontal as well. You can also specify as hidden. So these are the possible values. One is visible, hidden, scroll, and auto. There are two additional properties. One is overflow X and overflow Y. So these are for vertical and horizontal scrolling or clipping, we would say. So what overflow does is it basically allows you to specify whether to clip or render scroll bar of the block level element. So when I say block level element, these are basically div elements, p elements, and so on. So let us take one example. So in case you have one div, so we are restricting height and width for that div. But in case there are chances that your content is going to overflow from that element, then you can specify overflow Y, and you can specify value as scroll. So this is how the output would be. So this is height and width specified for that div element, and because of overflow Y, the scroll bar has got added over here. So when you specify visible, even if the text is not overflowing, even in those cases a scroll bar will be displayed, as in the scroll bar will always be there, but it will be in the decimal board in case the text is not overflowing, and it will get automatically enabled if the text is overflowing. And when you specify hidden, scroll bar will never be shown, the text will get automatically clipped, but you can still scroll with the help of mouse. And when you say auto, it will not be displayed, but it will only work wherein your text is going to overflow. Okay, so but more often the scroll as a value is commonly used. Then we'll quickly talk about the dimensions. So in terms of dimensions, there are few properties which are height, width, then max height and max width, then minimum height and minimum width. So talking about height and width as a property, this property does not include any kind of padding, borders, or margins. These property takes values in px, pt, em, etc., even percentage and keyword auto. So auto is somewhere used when you are going to rely on the browser that it needs to be automatically handled. So the rendering engine will take its best decision in that case. This is generally used when you want to rely on resize information of the browser. In those special cases, you can use the auto. Generally, it is used at the element level or at the root element levels. But in other cases, you can usually specify it in pixels, percentage, or EMs. So this is one example. We have specified width and height in 100 pixel, and when I specify a border, you can see that this particular div element has got fixed height and width and a border as well. When we say max height, then it is going to be the maximum height for that particular box. Okay, so in case you have height as 200 pixel and width as 100 pixel, even with that, max height 100 will be applied. So 200 will not be applied, 100 will be applied in this case. Okay, so this kind of behavior is useful when you're working on some code wherein you are expecting that content might get increased by a certain ratio, and you still want to retain all the elements to its original height. In that case, you can definitely use max height. Similar to max height, we have minimum height. So in case you have height as 50 and minimum height as 100, so even in this case, the actual height of the element will be 100, because you're specifying explicitly that the minimum height for this element will be 100. Okay. And then finally, we will talk about max width, and this will be applied to the width. It is similar to max height. So maximum width can be applied as the specified value. Here we are saying 150, but even if I say width as 200, even with that, maximum width for the specified element will be 150. And similarly for minimum width, with having width as 100 pixel, and if you specify minimum width as 150, so to this particular element, minimum width will be applied as 150 pixels. There could be in a certain cases wherein you will have chances that after a certain condition, width or height of your element is going to change dynamically because of some call function or content is changing. In those cases, setting these properties will be useful. All right, let us take one quick example on lists, tables, and outlines. So in the example folders, you can find this folder: list, tables, outline, cursor, overflow, and dimensions. So inside this folder, you can find these three files. This is one image that we will be using for list to have a custom bulleting to a ordered list or an unordered list. And then these are our two HTML and CSS files. So I have kept these files open over here. So this is the HTML file, and this file has reference to the CSS file that I mentioned. So I have kept the CSS file open here. So this is the CSS file. I have also kept the browser page open. So this is the expected output, or this is the output that will be displayed on the screen when we run the code. And I will start explaining with the HTML code first. Okay, so in the head tag, I have referenced the CSS file. I have also added the title to this page. Then we have one h2 tag, and then a p tag, which is just highlighting that I'm just going to display an unordered list. For unordered list, I have ul tag, and inside this I have to list items, and then another p tag. It is one order list after that, and again it has two list items. Then this is the third one, to which we have specified one class name. So let us see the first two ul and ol tags that are here. So when we write ul tag, so this is unordered list, so this is how it will be displayed. And then we have one ordered list wherein the numbering will be used, but I am going to specify the type as Roman. So this is something that can be done using the CSS class. So if you notice, to default ul and ol tags, I have defined the style sheet as list style type as square, and to the ol tags I have specified list style type as upper Roman. So this is how it is displaying the upper Roman over here. And then for the list style type, it is displaying a square like this. And then we have one UL list where I have specified class as position. So to this particular class, I am specifying list style position as inside. So what is happening is, if you notice, this list bullets are coming inside of the box. Okay, so this is the whole box, and this list items or the list bullets are coming inside of the box, and by default these are out of the box. So if you notice a line, if you try to just visualize a line from this KB, then you can see that these bullets are falling in those particular box elements. So this can be useful when you have some strict formatting that needs to be done. Then we will talk about one custom bulleting. So what I'm doing is I'm specifying list style image, and I'm specifying the ticker that I just showed at the start of this tutorial. So this is the name of that file. Okay, so instead of normal bullets, so these tickers will be shown for each list items. So after lists, now we'll talk about few table properties. Okay, so by default, again, what I've done is I've specified border as 1 pixel of solid form and of the red color to all the table TD and TH. By default, it creates some space between outermost border, that is for the table, and the border of the TD element. Okay, so when we write border collapse collapse as the value, so it will display something like this. Okay, so this is how the border has got collapsed, and it has removed the spacing between tables and TD or TH. Then because the text are almost touching to the TD, what we are doing is we are adding some padding, and that is being done using the padding property, and the padding is basically applied to the TH and TD elements. Okay, so this is the code that is rendering this part. Then we can have a fixed layout where I specified width as 200 pixel, and the table layout is specified where the value is set as fixed. So what is happening over here is, because of that fixed layout, each of the TD element is being specified the fixed width. Okay, so if it's 200, so 200 by 3 will be width of each particular TD element. Okay, so if I increase this by, let's say, 400, okay, and I hit refresh, so it will increase overall width of the table, but still all the TDs will have same width. Okay, so in the next example, we can see that this particular table element has one empty cell over here, and this is happening because of this empty cell hide. Okay, and if you notice the HTML related to this particular code, it has one empty TD, and it is not displaying over here. Okay, so let me just remove that particular line. Okay, and when I hit refresh, you can notice that this empty cell has reappeared. Okay, so in case you want to hide this TD, you can write this property that empty cells hide, and all the empty cells will get hidden automatically. Okay, then we have outlines. So in outlines there are various types. These are almost similar to the border lines. Okay, so in the HTML, you can notice that I have written one h2 tag, which is displaying this outline keyword over here, and then we have this couple of p tags where I have specified different classes. Okay, so let us quickly check these classes. So first we have the none, wherein I have specified outline style as none, so it is not displaying anything over here as the outline. Then we have outline style as hidden, and that is also hiding the outline style. Then we have dashed, so you can notice this is how the dashed will look, this is how the dotted lines will look, this is how the double lines will look. So you can notice the similar code is here. Okay, then grew, inset, outset, ridge, solid. These all we have seen while discussing the borders. So this is how the look will be. Then we have code related to this bottom part. So let me just quickly check the HTML for this. So if you notice, we have this cursor, and I have specified class as cursor pointer. So by default, if you notice that on the browser we have different cursors. For example, now an arrow is displayed. So when I move the arrow to this particular text area or the text box, you can see that it is changing the cursor style. Similarly, I can specify the custom cursors for my HTML element. For example, here I am displaying this cursor pointer. Okay, so by this we have multiple other cursor pointers as well. I think I have listed those in the slides, but you can still go ahead and check these into this browser mode. So I can just change mode of this particular browser element. Yeah, and in case I change it to some other value, let's say crosshair. Okay, so when I hover here, so you can notice that the cursor pointer has got changed to crosshair. Okay, so you can just play around this particular property, and maybe try to look how different cursor pointers are. So this is particularly move cursor. So let me close this again, and we will continue with the overflow class is attached to this div element. Okay, and then we have couple of div elements where we have specified these classes again. So let us check this one by one. So let us start with this first overflow. So to overflow, I specified fixed width and height, to which I am specifying overflow y at scroll. So with this fixed height and width, what is happening is, for this particular div element, it is going to restrict the width and height of this element. But because there is a lot of text, what we can do is we can add overflow y, and that will add one scroll bar on the y axis of this particular element. Okay, now let us talk about the dimensions. So we have discussed max height, minimum height, max width and minimum width as the property. So you can check for this particular div, we have specified width as 100, height as 300, and then max height as 200. So if we notice in the inspect tab, so we will just talk about the first element where I specified max height as 200. Okay, so even if I explicitly specify height as 300, maximum height that can be applied to the element is 200. So you can notice into this computed box that the height is 200 and width is 100. So if we just try to change the height from here 400, so you'll see there is no effect. But when I change the height as, let's say, 400, then you'll see the effect. But if I change it to 500, it won't change. Okay, so maximum height can be only utilized, the largest value be picked when you have height and maximum height used at the same time. Similarly, in case of width, it is same thing is going to happen. The highest value will be utilized. In case of minimum width and minimum height, lower value will be utilized. So again, you can play around these values. You can download these examples from the website, and just try play around these values from the inspect window and see how the results are to clear out your understanding.